morning. Oh, where did Bailey go? Oh, there you are. Thank you. Do you know, there's more truth in this, in that God is part of everything. And I think about that a lot when it comes to dealing with other people, you know. And you know that it's between you and Spirit, really. It's or whatever, however you refer to God that within us. But I wanted to tell you an incident. I'm telling you, I think I told the rest of them. But I was going to the courthouse, and there was a man who approached me and said, I'm really hungry, and said, if you could let me have $5. And he pointed down to, I can't think of whether it was Jack in the Box or whatever it was. He said I could get me some lunch. And so I pulled out the $5, and then I put it back, and I pulled out a 20, and I said, here, take this, just in case you're Jesus in disguise. He had this faraway look on his face for a while. And the truth is, he was. That's right. You know, I think I've got my message upside down. Not really? Yeah. This one's really important to me because I often wonder, I don't want to take a survey on this, but I'd sort of like to in a way. But if the feeling is within you that evolving within you and in your life is the best of everything, that's the way it should be. In other words, you may feel like that's extraordinary, but somehow in the way we've been taught in the past and so forth, we may not feel that way. Things that have happened, events that have happened. I'm going to read a scripture that sort of describes this. Now, I rarely ever read from the Lamsa translation. I always check it but this particular time there was a word that in every other translation that I didn't like. I said, this is not what Jesus would have said, you know. And so I checked that one, and sure enough, it was perfect in the native language of the Aramaic. But here's the scripture, and everybody knows this one. You could quote it along with me. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For whosoever asks receives, and he who seeks finds. And to him who knocks, the door is open. Or who is the man among you, when his son asks for bread, will hand him a stone? Or if he should ask for a fish, would he hand him a snake? Pat, there you go. And this is the part that I see it differently. If therefore you who err, do you get that err? Okay, the other translations say, you who are evil. I can't see that coming out of the mouth of Jesus, can you? I mean, I know Jesus. He's a friend of mine. But if you who err know how to give good gifts to your sons, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Now, this whole thing about your having the best of everything, this is a God plan. It's not my plan. It took me most of my life to discover that really was the intent for my life, that I have the best of everything. There is a quote. This is from Deepak Chopra, and it's from his little bitty book called Creating Affluence. People with wealth consciousness. Now notice it didn't say people with great wealth, but people with wealth consciousness, settle for only the best. This is also called the principle of the highest first. So, go first class all the way, and the universe will respond by giving you the very best. Notice the word wealth consciousness. See, now, that's different. That's a lot different than to say wealth. So that's a very important item in this. I think of it in my interpretation of wealth consciousness as this. This is mine. I don't know whether you've read anything of anybody quoting me or not. I doubt it. But you can quote me if you like. But it's having all you need and much more. That to me is the best of everything. When you reach a point to where you know if it's not here already, it's on its way. But good things are showing up in my life. Okay. I had a friend, and it's a story that it's a little difficult for me to tell because I had the friendship over years and years, well, 30 years, I guess, 30 some odd years maybe. But to tell the story, when I first met him, it was because I was going to build him a boat slip. And this is a boat slip where you set panels down, you drill piers, encase them, and the piers are below way down in the water, and then you set concrete panels on that, and you connect them all together in such a way, and then you pour patio above it and so forth. I'm trying to give you, and then he wanted some retaining walls, and then he wanted a cover on over his boat and everything, and he wanted it to be such that there would be a patio up above, and he wanted everything to be the very best. And he had called a company, Gifford Hill, and they said, he said, they told me when I called Gifford Hill that you were the very best at this. And I said, yes. I said, I started that rumor myself. And he appreciated that. But the man one day, and this was quite a few years later, told me the story. His house was among the best, and then they had a beautiful guest house out back. But he told me the story of what had happened to him, in that he and his wife both had quit school before they graduated. He went into the service, and in the service he had worked in a machine shop and had learned how to operate machines that turned out products. And so he said when he got out of the service, he went to work for a Bell helicopter. And then he met a man who part-time, this is after hours, he had bought a machine and he was making some parts and that Bell helicopter needed. In other words, he had a contract for so many parts every month that he had to turn out, and they were well paid for that. Well, anyway, the man took him in as a partner. And so pretty soon they bought another machine, and then at some point the man had passed away, but he had left all of this and the contracts and everything to my friend. And so he kept buying one machine after the other. Well, when I met him, he had just sold everything, and so he took me down because I hadn't started his boat slips yet. We were still in that contract stage, but he wanted to take me down, and it's not too far from Bell Helicopter on Highway 10, and he took me through and it was a massive amount of machinery. And so years later, he told me the deal he had been given was that this company, this corporation, bought him out. They paid him a huge amount of cash, and then they gave him $2 million in stock that he couldn't cash in for 2 years. And he said in that 2 years, it actually increased. It didn't fall apart, but it actually increased. And he said he had this wonderful CPA that wanted to show him how to not pay any taxes on what he made when he cashed it in. And so he said there's a government thing going on right now to where if you buy an oil tanker, you get a tax-free break. So he spent all of the money that he got from this, buying these things, and he said he never saw one of them. He said if one of them, something broke on it, they repaired it and then took it off of the check. But every 90 days, he said, and it was a wonderful check that he got every 90 days after that. Well, at the time that I met him, we're building his boat slip and some other things that he wanted around, and he hasn't poured his foundation for his house yet, but he was making regular trips to Las Vegas. That seemed to be the thing that had entertained he and his wife, and so they were doing that. They had done some other extensive traveling, and they were in pursuit of the best of everything. And he bought antique cars, and one of the reasons I know about this is he always wanted to take myself and my wife to see the car shows that he had. And then finally one day, the Liberace show was closing at Caesar's Palace, and there was this 1931 Cadillac convertible, and it couldn't be in car shows because it was taken out of context. It was, it had diamonds in the hubcaps. It had gold fleck in the paint job, and the seat covers were all mink. Perfect for Liberace. But he wanted that car, and whatever it cost, when it broke up and it's over. And he had so many wonderful cars, I'd have to sit down and try to remember all of them because it's been so many years. But then we had a time later when their daughter was getting into, she's like a teenager still. She's still in high school, but she's a good singer, and so she got into country and western. Well, they took her to Nashville and did recordings, and they did everything they could to promote her career. And finally, the big falling out, he and his wife, because he said it's time to stop. We're not going to invest any more money. And she said, I think we're just, it was like, you've ruined our lives, kind of a deal. And so during this period of time, like I said, I had been going with them to hear the daughter, and she was really good. I couldn't imagine why she didn't succeed. But the idea, when the wife was an unusual lady too. Both of them were delightful people. But she had spent money because she wanted new breasts. She wanted a new behind. She got it. A facelift. She got it. And the thing, I've got this picture that will never go away in my mind, because once they finished their house and everything, they had this wonderful aggregate in their driveway, and it's called Rainbow, and it's small aggregate, all the colors of the rainbow, and it's mixed in there. And she liked it so well that she pressure washed it about twice a week. But the picture that in my mind of her doing it is she had rubber boots up to her knees, and then she was in a very brief bikini. That's a picture that won't go away. Well, she was my age. That was a long time ago, quite a while back. But the unhappiness, and I had work to do for them. I came and visited with them, and he was living out in the guest house, and she was living in the house. They didn't want a divorce, and he was still making lots of money coming in. But they were about as unhappy. It was a sad place, really. And I loved them, and I really cared about them, and I didn't want to see this happening to them. I had no solution because they were so set that it had ruined the daughter's life. It had ruined her life. It had, just like everything is ruined. And on the last day I saw him, he had gotten rid of all of his antique cars and all the things that I thought he loved so well. And he had one Mercedes that was just like brand new. It was older. I can't remember now what year. It wasn't enough to be an antique, but it was way back. And he tried to sell it for me for a fraction of it. And I said, well, do you know, that's really not the kind of things that I want to drag around with me. And I said, maybe you can make some deal with somebody else. I said, I know it's valuable. It was the very, very nice plush, and just like brand new, even though it was 25 or so years old. But I thought, it made such an impression on me to see people that think that actually that money will do all of this. But this isn't what it is. I think that there's a point here that I want to make, that we have to have the awareness that life itself is like a collaboration between ourselves and spirit. In other words, I didn't want to use the word partnership. I did this thing. I wish I didn't do this. But what is the book that we finally had to look up to find?
The Stars.
What?
The Stars.
Yes. Okay, did you hear that? Anyway, you know what it is. It's where you have all the synonyms. And I had used the word partnership. And so this thing of collaboration I liked. But then while I'm looking through 50 different synonyms, I saw this word that I love. It was in cahoots. Cahoots. I didn't know you would find that in a dictionary, but I liked it. And that's what we are, really. We're in cahoots with spirit. Oh, I got to stop here and tell you a joke. Before I go on with this thing. There was this guy, he woke up one morning and he's reading the paper and he looked at the obituaries and there was his name saying he had died. He called his very best friend and said, "Hey, have you read the paper this morning?" And the guy said, "Yes, I did." Said, "Did you see where it said that I died?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "I saw it." He said, "By the way, where are you calling from?" Okay, to work to our very best, to achieve the best that life has, we have to work with all of the things that we have in life to work with. And this, spiritually, I've discovered is the best answer ever. And did you know that just like looking at things in life as I go along here, and the older I get, how is it possible to be at age 80 and to be having the time of your life? I don't know how that can happen. But if you could have seen me yesterday, we babysat with an 8-month-old grandbaby, and this is like a celebration of life. And what part of it is learning that this is the truth, that even though the scripture is telling us that God has said, what kind of father do you think I am? That if you, as having the human experience down here, give good things and want the very best for your children, what about me? What about? It's so much more than you could imagine that I want to give to you. Think about that. It makes so much sense, doesn't it? It's not the idea that we came up growing up with, like the song that says, "Such a wretch as I." In other words, evil sinners saved by grace. I don't know. That never did strike me exactly right. But now that I feel like I really, really am in collaboration or in cahoots with Spirit, it feels so right that God intends to give us the very best of everything. We start out now by discovering and then making out of the best of what we have. That's where you start on this journey of the very best, is just making the best out of everything you have. Now, you don't think about things like that influencing what happens next in your life, but it certainly does. There is this thought. With your mind, if you see the best in everything, it seems as though it's a creative force. There's an interesting quote from the Course in Miracles, and I think it's in the workbook. Jim back there would know for sure. But here's what it says. What you see has only the meaning you give it. That struck me as a great truth that maybe I had never really realized, that what I see has only the meaning I give it. Whatever happens to me, whatever event shows up, whatever circumstances I'm in, has only the meaning that I give it. That's the only meaning it has. If we're copying somebody else's meanings, we may be doing the wrong thing, because we have the power to decide what this means to us. We have that power within us. We can decide. And so we can reinterpret events as they come about. When I think of the things that feel like the best to me, I'm just giving you an example now. But I have such things as like my little collection of rocks, and most of them came from Guanajuato, Mexico, and out of the mines there. And there's crystals, but they're beautiful. They're beautiful, but they're not expensive. I think if you put the whole thing together, it might be $200 worth. And I've got all of my books that I've saved through the years, many of my textbooks from college and everything, but I've got one book that is just a treasure to me. But I took it to a rare book dealer, and he said, it's wonderful, but he said it's not really worth anything. But other than a little, I think he said. But it was a book that my son, who lived in New York and was in theater, lived 4 years, the last 4 years of the life of Maria Tolstoy. And that's the granddaughter of Leo Tolstoy, who, and she had, with her family in the revolution in 1917, escaped to Czechoslovakia. But when Hitler was taking Czechoslovakia, well, they came to the United States. This is 1939. And so they came to the United States. And so she taught Russian in Columbia University. But she liked to have someone, after she grew elderly, to be in the house with her. She had a wonderful apartment on East 96th Street and Madison Avenue, right one block from Park Avenue. And so my son was invited, because the person who left, she liked somebody from the theater. So he was the last person to live there. And so when she died, well, he rushed home. He was rushing home already. She had called him and that she didn't feel well. He was rushing home from his job. And so she had passed away when he got there. The Tolstoy Museum in upstate New York got nearly everything, but there was some things left. And one of the things that he had that he gave to me was a book that Leo Tolstoy had written, and it was first in Russian, but it wasn't the first edition, but it was the first edition in English. And he had written a hand note there, and the edition was 1898 that it had been written. And so anyway, he gave me that book plus a few other things. Now, this is treasure. This to me, because of my fascination for literature and for history, this is treasure to me. But it goes beyond that, because just like coming to this church, I feel like that y'all were all designed, for me personally, has nothing to do with anybody else. And here is this perfect board. It's wonderful. Do you realize that they do all the work but give me all the credit? How can you get away? Look at our music and what we had today. Yeah. Think about it. Think about it. But then it goes deeper than that, because I feel like Pat was designed especially for me. Just like I sent down and said, look, this is your project. It was a big project, but it felt that way. But then my stepchildren, my children, it feels like that everything, the job, people that I meet, my friends are the classiest bunch of people that you've ever met in your life. They're wonderful. It just goes on and on. My daughter-in-laws, my son-in-laws. And I'm saying, God, you really do miracles. You really do miracles. And I think about the beginning of miracles. And this, again, is Course in Miracles. And one of the little definition of a miracle, it says, a miracle is a shift in perception. So the day that I started trying to see differently, then things began to change and you began to attract things into your life. And then you feel like the most fortunate person in the world. Well, here's my whole idea and what I'm getting to. I've learned that you not only have to pray for this for yourself, but you have to pray for it for everybody else. This is so important that every situation, whether it's business or whatever it is a win-win deal when you look at it. That's what you want to get into. You don't want to argue to take something because there's plenty for everybody. That's the thing that you have to learn about what spirit is like. There's enough to go around. For you to have more, no one has to have less. That's life. That's a true statement, but not everybody knows it. I loved it. The very first thing coming to New Thought, I went to positive thinking type rally with Edwin Gaines. It was actually, well, you know who she is and the kind of talk she gives. And the very first thing, this is amazing that I can remember this for 30 years. But she started off and she said, she's talking about how much money in the world has been printed. And she said, if you divided that out by how many billion people in the earth, said that would be at least $1 billion for every one of us. Said, do you have yours yet? That's how I feel about God's good. There is so much of it, and it's not God ever holding back. There's nothing about spirit that holds back from us. It's the way we think and the mindset we have and the attitudes we develop about life that creates a world for us that makes us feel like we have the best of everything. Do you know that before I came here this morning, my prayer was centered around this. And I didn't know who would show up today, but there's one thing that everybody that walks out this door, my prayer is that if not already, that you begin to feel that life is dealing you up the very best of everything. Thank you.